All right. Hi, everyone. So, I almost said this is the third part of Color Magic. It's not. I mean, the third part of the book. It's called The Lure of the Worm. But this is actually part 8 of how I am splitting up Color Magic. It is from my friend Rob. Hello, Rob. Thank you very much. Let's do this. It was called the Wormberg, and it rose almost one half of a mile above the Green Valley. A mountain, huge, gray, and upside down. I'm running with it. I can't even. You can't even question these sort of things. At its base, it was a mere score of yards across. Then it rose through clinging cloud, curving gracefully outward like an upturned trumpet, until it was truncated by a plateau fully a quarter of a mile across. There was a tiny forest up there, its greenery cascading over the lip. There were buildings. There was even a small river tumbling over the edge in a waterfall so wind-whipped that it reached the ground as rain. There were also a number of cave mouths a few yards below the plateau. They had a crudely carved, regular look about them, so that on this crisp autumn morning the Wormberg hung over the clouds like a giant's dovecote. This would mean that the doves had a wingspan slightly in excess of 40 yards. I knew it, said Rincewind. We're in a strong magical field. Two-Flower and Huron looked around the little hollow where they had made their noonday halt. Then they looked at each other. The horses were quietly cropping the rich grass by the stream. Yellow butterflies skittered among the bushes. There was a smell of thyme and a buzzing of bees. The wild pigs on the spit sizzled gently. Huron shrugged and went back to oiling his biceps. They gleamed. Oh, no, I'm sorry, they gleamed. Looks all right to me, he said. Try tossing a coin, said Rincewind. What? Go on, toss a coin. Okay, said Huron, if it gives you any pleasure. He reached into his pouch and withdrew a handful of loose change, plundered from a dozen realms. With some care, he selected a shoddy leaden quarter iotum and balanced it on a purple thumbnail. You call, he said, heads, or he inspected the obverse with an air of intense concentration. We, some sort of fish with legs, when it's in the air, said Rincewind. Huron grinned and flicked his thumb. The iotum rose, spinning. Edge, said Rincewind, without looking at it. Edge? What? Magic never dies. It merely fades away. Nowhere was this more evident on the wide blue expanse of the Discworld than in those areas that had been the scene of the great battles of the Mage Wars, which had happened very shortly after creation. In those days, magic in its raw state had been widely available, and had been eagerly utilized by the first men in their war against the gods. The precise origins of the Mage Wars have been lost in the fogs of time, but Disc philosophers agree that the first men, shortly after their creation, understandably lost their temper, and great and pyrotechnic were the battles that followed. The sun wheeled across the sky. The seas boiled. Weird storms ravaged the land. Small white pigeons mysteriously appeared in people's clothing. I just got that fucking joke. God, I hate this book. It was like, that just seems mildly oh, magicians and pigeons. Okay, and the very stability of the disc, carried as it was through space on the backs of 4 giant turtle-riding elephants, was threatened. This resulted in stern action by the old High Ones, to whom even the gods themselves are answerable. The gods were banished to high places, men were recreated a good deal smaller, and much of the old wild magic was sucked out of the earth. That did not solve the problem of those places on the disc which, during the wars, had suffered a direct hit by a spell. The magic faded away, slowly, over the millennia, releasing as it decayed myriads of subastral particles that severely distorted the reality around it. Rincewind, Two-Flower, and Huron stared at the coin. Edge it is, said Huron. Well, you're a wizard, so what? I don't do that sort of spell. You mean you can't? That's also true. Rincewind ignored this, because it was true. God, I should just read the next sentence sometimes. Try it again, he suggested. Huron pulled out a fistful of coins. The first 2 landed in the usual manner, so did the 4th. The 3rd landed on its edge and balanced there. The 5th turned into a small yellow caterpillar and crawled away. The 6th, upon reaching its zenith, vanished with a sharp spang. A moment later there was a small thunderclap. Hey, that one was silver, exclaimed Huron, rising to his feet and staring upward. Bring it back! I don't think he took it. Never mind, Huron. I don't know where it's gone, said Rincewind warily. It's probably still accelerating. The ones I tried this morning didn't come down anyway. Huron was still staring into the sky. What? Said Two-Flower. Rincewind sighed. He had been dreading this. We've strayed into a zone with a high magical index, he said. Don't ask me how. Once upon a time, a really powerful magic field must have been generated here, and we're feeling the after effects. Precisely, said a passing bush. I really need to not react to the weird things like this happening. No, reacting's fun. Hrun's head jerked down. You mean this is one of those places, he asked. Let's get out of here. Right, agreed Winston. If we retrace our steps, we might make it. We can stop every mile or so and toss a coin. He stood up urgently and started stuffing things into his saddlebags. What? Said Two Flower. Rincewind stopped. Look, he snapped, just don't argue, come on. It looks all right, said Two Flower, just a bit underpopulated, that's all. Yes, said Rincewind. Odd, isn't it? Come on. There was a noise high above them, like a strip of leather being slapped on a wet rock. Something glassy and indistinct passed over Rincewind's head, throwing up a cloud of ashes from the fire, and the pig carcass... I can't even... I can't... The pig... The pig carcass took off from the spit and rocketed into the sky. It banked to avoid a clump of trees, righted itself, roared around in a tight circle, and headed hubward, leaving a trail of hot pork fat droplets. What are they doing now? Asked the old man. The young woman glanced at the scrying glass. Heading rimward at speed, she reported. By the way, they still got that box on legs. The old man chuckled, an oddly disturbing sound in the dark and dusty crypt. Sapient pearwood, he said. Remarkable. Yes, I think we will have that. Please see to it, my dear. Perhaps they go beyond your power, perhaps. Oh, I'm sorry, I added a perhaps in there because I messed up the reading. Silence, or what, Liessa? Said the old man. In this dim light, there was something odd about the way he was slumped in the stone chair. You killed me once already, remember? She snorted and stood up, tossing back her hair scornfully. It was red, flecked with gold. Erect, Liessa, worm-bitter, was entirely a magnificent sight. She was also almost naked, except for a couple of mere scraps of the lightest chainmail, and riding boots of iridescent dragon hide. In one boot was thrust a riding crop, unusual in that it was as long as a spear and tipped with tiny steel barbs. My power will be quite sufficient, she said coldly. The indistinct figure appeared to nod, or at least to wobble. As you keep assuring me, he said. Liessa snorted and strode out of the hall. Her father did not bother to watch her go. One reason for this was, of course, that since he had been dead for 3 months, his eyes were not... What? His eyes were, in any case, not in the best condition. I don't question it, Mark. The other was that, as a wizard, even a dead wizard of the 15th grade, his optic nerves had long since become attuned to seeing into levels and dimensions far removed from common reality, and were therefore somewhat inefficient at observing the merely mundane. During his life, they had appeared to others to be eight-faceted and eerily insectile. Besides, since he was now suspended in the narrow space between the living world and the dark shadow world of death, he could survey the whole of casualty itself. That was why, apart from a mild hope that this time his wretched daughter would get herself killed, he did not devote his considerable powers to learning more about the 3 travelers galloping desperately out of his realm. What the hell? Several hundred yards away, Liessa was in a strange humor as she strode down the worn steps that led into the hollow heart of the Wormburg, followed by half a dozen riders. Would this be the opportunity? Perhaps here was the key to break the deadlock, the key to the throne of the Wormburg. It was rightfully hers, of course. The tradition said that only a man could rule the Wormburg. That irked Liessa, and when she was angry, the power flowed stronger, and the dragons were especially big and ugly. If she had a man, things would be different. Someone who, for preference, was a big strapping lad, but short on brains. Someone who would do what he was told. Hrun. Oh, she's going to kidnap Hrun, isn't she? The biggest of the 3 now fleeing the dragon's lands might do. And if it turned out that he wouldn't, the dragons were always hungry and needed to be fed regularly. She could see to it that they got ugly. Uglier than usual, anyway. The stairway passed through a stone arch, and ended in a narrow cavern ledge near the roof of the great cavern where the worms roosted. The worms? I don't want to know. Sunbeams from the myriad entrances around the walls crisscrossed the dusty gloom like amber rods in which 1,000,000 golden insects had been preserved. Below, they revealed nothing but a thin haze. Above, the walking rings started so close to Liessa's head that she could reach up and touch one. They stretched away in their thousands across the upturned acres of the cavern roof. It had taken a score of masons a score of years to hammer the pythons for all these, hanging from their work as they progressed. Yet they were as nothing compared to the 88 major rings that clustered near the apex of the dome. A farther 50 had been lost in the old days as they were swung into place by teams of sweating slaves, and there had been slaves aplenty in the first days of the power, and the great rings had gone crashing into the depths, dragging their unfortunate manipulators with them. But 88 had been installed, huge as rainbows, rusty as blood. From them... Oh. I was like, what are those for? And then the next sentence just tells... The dragons sense Liessa's presence. Air swishes around the cavern as 88 pairs of wings unfold like a complicated puzzle. Great heads with green, multifaceted eyes peer down at her. The beasts are still faintly transparent. While the men around her take their hook boots from the rack, Liessa bends her mind to the task of full visualization. Above her in the musty air, these dragons become fully visible, bronze scales dully reflecting the sunbeam shafts. Her mind throbs, but now that the power is flowing fully, she can, with barely a waver of concentration, think of other things. Now she, too, buckles on the hook boots and turns a graceful cartwheel to bring their hooks with a faint clang against a couple of the walking rings on the ceiling. Only now it is the floor. The world has changed. Now she's standing on the edge of a deep bowl or crater, floored with the little rings across which the dragon riders are already strolling with a pendulum gait. That's cool. So they're hanging upside down, walking. In the center of the bowl, their huge mounts wait among the herd. Far above are the distant rocks of the cavern floor, discolored by centuries of dragon droppings. Moving with the easy gliding movement that is second nature, Liessa sets off toward her own dragon, Leolith, who turns his great horsey head toward her. His jowls are greasy with pork fat. It was very enjoyable, he says in her mind. Well, at least the pig went to something. It wasn't wasted. I thought I said there were to be no unaccompanied flights, she snaps. I was hungry, Liessa. Curb your hunger. Soon there will be horses to eat. The reins stick in our teeth. Are there any warriors? We like warriors. Liessa swings down the mounting ladder and lands with her feet locked around Leolith's leathery necks. The warrior is mine. There are a couple of others you can have. One appears to be a wizard of sorts, she adds by way of encouragement. Oh, you know how it is with wizards. Half an hour afterward you could do with another one, the dragon grumbles. He spreads his wings and drops. So wizards are like Chinese food? Or Thai food? That's how I feel about Thai food. Whenever I eat Thai food, I'm super full for 2 hours, and then, oh my god, I'm like the hungriest person in the universe. Okay, anyway. They're gaining, screamed Rincewind. He bent even lower over his horse's neck and groaned. Two Flower was trying to keep up while at the same time craning around to look at the flying beasts. You don't understand, screamed the tourist above the terrible noise of the winged beasts. All my life I've wanted to see dragons. From the inside, shouted Rincewind. Shut up and ride. He whipped at the horse with the reins and stared at the wood ahead, trying to drag it closer by sheer willpower. Under those trees they'd be safe. Under those trees no dragons could fly. He heard the clap of wings before shadows folded around him. Instinctively he rolled in the saddle and felt the white-hot stab of pain as something sharp scored a line across his shoulders. Behind him, Hrun screamed, but it sounded more like a bellow of rage than a cry of pain. The barbarian had vaulted down into the heather and had drawn the black sword, Kring. He flourished it as one of the dragons curved in for another low pass. No bloody lizard does that to me, he roared. Rincewind leaned over and grabbed Two Flower's reins. Come on, he hissed. But the dragon, said Two Flower in trance. Blast the, began the wizard, and froze. Another dragon had peeled off from the circling dots overhead and was gliding toward them. Rincewind let go of Two Flower's horse, swore bitterly, and spurred his own mount toward the trees, alone. He didn't look back at the sudden commotion behind him, and when a shadow passed over him, merely gibbered weakly and tried to burrow into the horse's mane. Then, instead of the searing, piercing pain he expected, there was a series of stinging blows as the terrified animal passed under the eaves of the wood. The wizard tried to hang on, but another low branch, shorter than the others, knocked him out of the saddle. The last thing he heard before the flashing blue lights of unconsciousness closed in was a high reptilian scream of frustration and the thrashing of talons in the treetops. Shit. Okay, well, I have more to read, so this is getting close to 15 minutes. I'm going to make another video and keep reading.